You know, the devil doesn't chain you. He gives you each link and you in bondage yourself. Yes. I think when I initially auditioned for R. Kelly, I was so nervous because I wanted to impress him. I knew he was the best writer and producer in the business. He was working with Michael Jackson at the time. I was under R. Kelly, who did not mess with me. Mm-hmm. And he was considered the worst of the worst, right? He's in prison still.
A lot of stuff Diddy has been indicted on is terrible stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Heinous things.
Yep.
And you've been talking about him before everybody else was.
I did.
And did they listen or?
Nobody listened.
Okay.
Nobody listens.
When former PussyCat doll Kaya Jones sat down with Lecrae, she didn't hold anything back. What started as a casual talk turned into a shocking look inside the dark side of the music industry. An industry she says was full of manipulation, control, and spiritual warfare, hiding behind fame and glamour. Kaya revealed that before she ever joined the PussyCat Dolls, she was discovered by R. Kelly at just 12 years old. "He's the one who signed me," she explained. But that early start came with heavy pressure. Kaya described her studio days as long and exhausting, working from noon until past midnight, recording the same lines over and over again.
You interacted with R. Kelly
Yes.
as a young girl.
Yes.
Any weirdness?
Nothing.
Okay.
That's what's even crazier.
Wow.
Is that when I hear all of this, I was like, Robert? That's interesting.
Yeah.
So immediately I wondered, was he the scapegoat for other people? Why did this happen to him? But you can't ask those questions.
Yeah.
And definitely at my age, you couldn't ask that question at the time. I was a young girl. I was like 15, you know, and Aaliyah. So like the chain of events. So I get signed to Robert and it was drill sergeant. It was pick me up at 12 noon by a car. I was then taken to the studio. I'm tracking the entire day until 2 a.m. I mean, he had me do, because back then we didn't do chopping or cutting vocals. There was no auto-tune. There was no autocorrect. It was tape. Mm-hmm. So if you started bad and it went off midway, again. Mm-hmm. And it was like, I remember we did one song 111 times till my throat actually was bleeding on my pillow the following morning because I was singing from my throat and not from my diaphragm. And so that's my encounter with Robert was like drill sergeant. Drill sergeant, take it seriously, no joke. There was no, I mean, I never even saw the man smile. He was so stern.
You saw
with
the
me.
workhorse side.
Oh my gosh, he was so, yes. Like he had me doing jumping jacks in between a song because he wanted me to be ready to like push. And I was thinking, like, I came back to the mic and I was like out of breath. And he was like, that's not what I'm expecting. I'm expecting you to sing, like push. And I was like, I did not understand. And I would actually go into the bathroom and cry. So he had a thing where he was like, don't let her go into the bathroom because she's going to go cry. And he was very, very serious. So then I picked up smoking because it was the only thing the guys in the room would allow me to go outside and do to take a break because they smoked too. So they'd be like, oh, yeah, we can go for a smoke break. So then that's how that demon came into my life was, well, I can smoke cigarettes to get a breather. I was 12, 13, 14. Okay?
You are in it. You are in it.
In it. And then I became a scotch drinker at that age because if I drank that, I was more like a boy and less like a girl. And they saw me more like a friend or like a little sister. So I always dressed jeans and a t-shirt like I'm not available.
To cope with the nonstop pressure, Kaya said she started picking up bad habits just to find space to breathe. The only way I could step outside was to say I needed a break, she admitted. It was the first step into what she called a spiritual trap. And her success started to become a chain instead of a blessing.
But there were crazy things. They would put stripper poles into the recording studio because such and such artists needed to be inspired. They would bring dancers and all that kind of stuff I was open to
You're
seeing.
15.
Less than that, I was 14.
14,
13,
just
14, yep.
drinking scotch, smoking cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
Are you enamored? Are you like, wow, this is the music industry? Or it's just another day? Like, what do you process?
I think when I initially auditioned for R. Kelly, I was so nervous because I wanted to impress him. I knew he was the best writer and producer in the business. He was working with Michael Jackson at the time for the Invincible album. He had just written I'm Your Angel for Celine Dion. He had created the Aaliyah movement of that incredible artist, and it was kind of established. He had done Destiny's Child. It was like he was the bee's knees of production.
Okay.
So when I walked in that day to audition, I was really nervous, actually, and I was enamored for sure. There was the plaques of Everything Everywhere of everyone you grew up listening to. And I remember he was sitting, and it was like he was like a king with like grapes and yeah, seriously. And he had his bandana, his white shirt, and his chains. And it was just like this big room with a piano. And he just sat, and it was like dim amber lighting. And he was like, sing. Literally, that's how it was. And I remember I stood up and I sang Amazing Grace. I sang I Will Survive. And I sat down, and he was like, when you come to an audition, you want to show. And I knew at that point it was over. Like I had lost the job or the opportunity. He says, he's like, you want to show, meaning like I did not do what I was supposed to do. What you can do. And I just stood up and I said, I can sing Celine. And he was like, do Celine. And I knew at that point, like I could and I should, and he would know her voice because he produced her. So then I sang I'm Your Angel, and he signed me on the spot. And that's how I got signed. So I was enamored in that moment, but then it became a routine. After years being under his tutelage, you understand, like, this is a routine. And it kind of falls away the excitement. You're around, Bow Wow and all of these artists and his performances. And, you're around all of these mega talents. And then Aaliyah dies. And that's when everything was like, it got really real really quickly. Aaliyah's plane went down, and everyone was worried because we didn't know where Rob was. And in fact, he was found by the maid. I've never shared any of this. He was found by the maid in his closet, completely dehydrated and passed out. He took it really hard. Really hard. He loved her very much.
And keeping with what we know about Diddy and R. Kelly, she said she witnessed things in the studio that no young performer should ever see. Environments filled with adult behavior and blurred boundaries, all excused as part of the creative process.
Keep in mind, you're going to be a group, and this is how it's going to work. And then there are individuals in the group who are like, well, I want to go further, or I want more of a star fame, or I want a solo deal. So they're willing to do certain things to get further. And you start to realize if you're not going to do those things, you're not going to get very far.
Yeah.
And I was just not willing to do those things.
Is that because of your spiritual upbringing, your just morals, or just your wiring? Like, what was it that made you say?
I mean, I was still out there. Like, when out there in the aspect of living in sin, I was still dating artists, having, a forced abortion. Like, these kinds of things were happening. I was still not a perfect person by any means, but I knew that sleeping with executives was a death sentence.
Okay.
Like,
you didn't want to shackle yourself.
Well, because those men can literally make or break whether or not you sing. And people are like, well, what happened to this one? Well, if she slept with the wrong person in this business. And I knew that from being around the serious men with R. Kelly, that you don't do that. Because if you do that, like, their girls are known.
Yeah.
And they're known as like pro-hoes. And it's horrible to say this, but this is how the institution views them. And so I would hear those jokes and comments and at 12, 13, 14 years old. So here I am, and I'm being propositioned. I'm like, no. And so as much as I was dating artists or people in the industry, I was not willing to sleep with executives to help my career. And that was, well, then you're only going to get so far.
She remembered one heartbreaking moment, performing on stage and revealing clothes while she was still recovering from personal loss, only to see two young girls in the audience looking up to her.
By the way, like, while I was losing my child and Patti LaBelle is like singing on stage, and this is Divas Live, and I'm like coming through the audience, and I'm at like the top of the row, in, MGM Garden in Las Vegas, which is 25,000 in auditorium, going out to 33 million people on VH1 and MTV. And I was told before I walked out, mind you, I'm in tiny little skirt, tiny little shirt, and I was still bleeding from losing my child the day before. And I had hemorrhaged and I couldn't stop bleeding. And there's these two little girls in the front row, and one was like 3 or 4, and the other one was like 7 or 8, 6 or 7, something like that. And she just looked at the little one and said, "Oh, Mama, she's a PussyCat doll." And that was like a check in my spirit, like, you can't do this. You really can't do this because you're losing your baby and you're selling this to kids. And she doesn't see what I am going through. She doesn't know anything that, that one has bulimia, that one's doing cocaine. I'm aborting my children. I mean, we're pretty disgusting.
Life is crumbling behind the scenes.
Right.
But
well, because it doesn't say caution, this is a lie.
Yeah.
It doesn't say that. It's like, well, you're on the cover of the magazine.
Ooh.
So doesn't matter how you got there, you're there.
Ooh.
So it's just this illusion. And what I was being told behind the scenes by the owner of the dolls was how fat I was.
Kaya also spoke about how she'd been warning people for years about powerful figures like Diddy, long before the recent scandals. Nobody listened, she said. It was more important to protect people in power. Her story didn't start easy, growing up with family struggles and painful experiences at a young age, but she said those early wounds made her aware of how darkness operates.
And I remember in my head, I was like, I've got to figure out how to get out. I got to figure out how to get the whole performance. I look back at that performance, it's crazy because I just totally faked it.
Yeah.
The whole time I was just like, I got to figure out how to get out. I got to figure out how to get out because I'm signed to some really scary people.
Kaya Jones once said that people thought she was living every girl's dream: fame, glamour, and a spot in one of the biggest pop groups in the world. But behind the smiles and choreography, her reality was nothing like what people saw on stage. She wasn't just part of a group. She was caught in a system that controlled every move she made. She described it as being in an environment where your worth depends on how well you obey orders. You're told what to say, what to wear, who to associate with, even who to pretend to like. Every friendship, every public appearance, every word in an interview, all pre-approved, all scripted. And if you ever step out of line, you're reminded who really owns your career.
That was the beginning of them kind of seeing, okay, there was someone in her corner.
Mm-hmm.
So I then felt stronger.
You had leverage.
Right. To then start to, just not comply as much.
Yeah.
Until eventually, just saying I want out. And then them offering me a solo deal. But still to be owned by the dolls. And I was like, oh no, I'm not demoing for this. I'm not demoing for their next album and then album after that. That ain't happening. Because we were paid $500 a week. I kept my paycheck stubs because people did not believe what I have said. And I have receipts because I refuse to be called a liar. I kept a journal of what I went through. I wanted to document it because it was so grotesque and brutal. That if anything ever happened to me, there was proof of why it could have been and what could have caused it. So I kept everything. But we were paid $500 a week. We were the #1 girl band in the world. I've never seen a single dime of any of my royalties. And my voice was on that first album. And I never got credit for it because I had to finish that album and then walk away and watch my friends ascend, never saying bye to the girls, and knowing that I would never get credit. That was hard. That was really, really hard.
Kaya said the industry has a way of dressing up control and calling it opportunity. It dangles fame in front of you like a prize, but keeps you too broke, too afraid, or too dependent to ever walk away. If you complain, they label you ungrateful. If you stay quiet, they reward your silence, and soon you don't even recognize yourself. You're just a brand, a product, not a person anymore. And more than that, you are a messenger of the agenda that the elite want to push.
I saw you tweeted out that Hollywood elites are pushing abortions, eating disorders on young women in the industry. So I wanted to ask you to elaborate a little bit more on that. Why do you think Hollywood elites are doing that, and how are they doing that?
Well, I think, I don't just think, I know personally with people that I have been in business with that have been affected by it and have been asked to do things that they don't want to do. And so that's how I know. I know from my own journey through this business of witnessing things that are just unacceptable. And we're used as artists to curate young minds. We know that. For me, I had to make that choice really early, especially with the PussyCat Dolls, because I was just turned 18 years old, so it was definitely something that I felt that I wasn't normal when I said I wasn't okay with what was going on. And it wasn't in front of the camera. I was okay with being a sexy, powerful young girl, like a Spice Girl, if you will, which was my growing up. They were my idols. And I had this crazy, wacky moment, where I was performing at MGM Grand Garden Arena in Vegas, and it's for Divas Live, and Patti LaBelle's wailing, and we're going on after Patti LaBelle, and there was these two little girls in the front row, and I was coming through the audience, only me and one other girl. The rest of them were coming up on a riser, and there were two little girls, and one was 4 years old, and she went, oh, she's a PussyCat doll. She was so excited to see us, and that was her reaction to me, and I just knew in that moment I couldn't do it, because this isn't what I would want any little girl to be, what was being pushed on us and what I was going through at that moment in time and what we had just endured backstage. And so it was a lot of the back end that I wasn't okay with.
She compared it to what Britney Spears once spoke about, feeling like a cash cow, a puppet in a business where you're used until there's nothing left. The pressure is constant. The fear of being replaced keeps everyone compliant. You start believing that this suffering is the price of success. And worst of all, if you're a woman working for men who see you as disposable pieces of meat, you are truly in hell on earth.
You said you weren't in a girl group, you were in a prostitution ring.
Yep.
And you just so happened to sing and be famous.
It's the easiest way to make it as clear as possible. Britney Spears has talked about how it felt like she was trafficked. I mean, that's a very similar word to prostitution.
Yeah.
Think about it.
Yeah.
We feel as though we're being like a cash cow, used, told what to do, what to say, what to think. Correct. Who to date, who to not date, who's your friend, who's not your friend, to the point where there's nothing organic anymore. There is no being led by the spirit. It's all already contrived for you. So, and then you're not paid very much because you can't leave. If you don't have enough money, then where are you going to run to? Who are you running to? You're going to give up your dream? I mean, this is your dream, right? Here's the carrot. Right. Here's your dream. And so it's almost impossible to get out. So when I see artists that are there, I'm like, God, make a way so they can get out.
So you were saying no one would believe you if you were saying there's this demonic stuff happening here. They wouldn't believe you.
No.
And it's interesting, right? Because you fast forward and it's social commentary about this stuff all the time. Even I think of
yes, it is.
I think of
yes.
A lot of stuff Diddy has been indicted on is terrible stuff, right? And heinous things.
Yep.
And you've been talking about him before everybody else was.
I did.
And did they listen or?
Nobody listened.
Okay.
Nobody listens. I was telling everybody that I was going through stuff. When I left the Dolls, I remember telling a reporter at Hollywood Reporter what I went through. Did it ever come out? Did anyone ever hear it? No. It was more important to protect people in power and positions. And my God is greater than all of you men.
She told reporters the truth about what she endured. The emotional manipulation, the false promises, the coercion. But her story was buried. The machine protects its own. Powerful people stayed protected while she was dismissed as bitter or crazy. And this is not the first time Kaya has tried to speak up about something. In 2017, she spoke publicly about the abuse and harassment she says she endured during her time in the industry.
Kaya, thank you for taking some time to speak with me after the panel.
Yes,
Appreciate
thank you
it.
for having me.
So, during the panel,
Yes.
you touched upon a few times
Yes.
the issue of sexuality in Hollywood and
Yes.
how it's impacting the kind of
Yes.
content we're seeing on the
Correct.
screen. Could you elaborate a little bit on why that is the case in Hollywood based on your experience?
It's evil. It's really just plain good and bad. You're dealing with a society right now which is just moral compass good versus bad. And it's to a point where if you're not willing to give something up, and that's why you see all of these very feminist women, which to me is like, to me they're not feminists because they're not, championing for me as a woman. But they're saying, kill your babies, it's great. Like, what? These are the things that are being said to women. And so if you're constantly submerged in that filth of a mindset, that's what you're going to see. And that's what you're seeing in our culture coming from Hollywood. And it's sad.
Kaya, who was part of the group between 2003 and 2005, described one particular incident that she says still haunts her. As just one example, a record executive asked me to get into his car, and I accepted. We were in Las Vegas, and we were all racing to get to the airport to take us back to LA after the show, she told the Daily Mail. It was just a 10-minute ride. I remember getting in the back seat of the limo with him, and within seconds, he jumped on me. I literally had to fight him off all the way to the airport. She was only 19 or 20 years old at the time, while the executive, she said, was in his 50s.
The Me Too movement, looking at that, do you think that has been beneficial?
No.
For Hollywood or for the country?
No, I think it was when it started. Had they not weaponized it for the political arena, it was working to talk about what women go through in the industry, what men go through in the industry. Men are pushed all the time to go the gay route, okay? So that's a very real thing. That's a very real thing. Pedophilia is a very real thing that goes on in the industry. Young girls being pushed to do things they don't want to do is very real in the industry. This has been discussed for so long. I don't think we're talking about it being real anymore. The problem is that then the Me Too movement decided to go, well, we came forward because of President Trump. He had accusations on him. No, I think you came forward because you finally had a guy in power that was pulling, the threads that were loose on all the issues in this country, and it gave you a voice to speak up. Then they decided to weaponize it, and the Kavanaugh hearing, that's where, as far as I'm concerned, you lost the movement because you weaponized it for political reasons.
You mentioned that there's a second wave coming.
There
not
is.
Just the Me Too.
There is.
What makes you say that that's coming?
Because I know.
In terms of men.
Because I know men that are coming forward. I know films that are being made discussing it. So I know a lot of men who have been abused in this industry, from they were kids in this industry to they were young adults and had to do things they didn't want to do.
As the industry was rocked by the Harvey Weinstein scandal, Kaya took to Twitter, saying the revelations gave her the courage to speak out about what she'd endured during her own rise in the entertainment world. Since she spoke up, many people have come out with claims of the truth about people like R. Kelly and Diddy and what they've done to children in the industry. Most notable of these whistleblowers is Jaguar Wright.
Like you said, that's some deep thing. That's deep. You know what I'm saying? I'm
gonna tell you something right now. It's common. It is common.
That's crazy. So how are these people able to keep going on with the career?
What do you mean?
Doing these heinous crimes.
What do you mean?
Like, I'm just saying.
You ain't never had a boy that did a whole bunch of dirt and you let him make it? You telling me that never happened? You never had somebody in your life who was dirty, who did dirt, and you let him make it?
I see what you're saying, but
think about that on a corporate level.
Right.
On a corporate level. R. Kelly was the first corporately sponsored pedophile in the United States. Everybody knew. That's why I couldn't really watch that documentary, because half of the people that was in there, I can't believe he did it. You used to go get the bitch too. I watched you, dog. I watched y'all make these deals. Don't nobody want to talk about Aaliyah. Because a predator is a predator. They don't care about their punishment. They just want to get their fix in, see?
Yeah.
Like, I know drug addicts who rob drug dealers knowing they're gonna come back and hurt them and hit them and shoot them and not care because the drugs are so good and they so numb, they just gonna take that beating. They done already got what they wanted. It's an addiction.
They made again, we just spoke on it last time, they made a whole song, you know, called Uncle Chester, Mama, Mama, Please Don't Leave, because Chester's gonna put his hands on me.
Yeah.
Do you feel like society is still turning a blind eye?
Of course they are. They're still letting their children watch TV. If society really gave a shit, they would turn off the televisions. They would take away the phones. Their children's minds, they are being groomed around the clock.
Now, you really have to wonder, every woman who worked with these people seems to have a terrible experience to talk about. How long is it before we see some truly big names taken to court, especially now that a precedent has been set with Diddy? Let us know in the comments.